What was different about Rainmaker is that we actually own and operate all the technology that enables this customer engagement. So we have our own CRM system, we have our own telephony solution, we have our own text messaging solution, we have our own omni-channel solution. So that enables us to continue to make improvements to the process on behalf of our customers. Welcome to Franchise Firsthand, the podcast where we go into the real world of franchising and small business ownership.
If you've ever wondered what it's actually like to run a franchise, you are in the right place.
I'm your host, Garth Fasano.
And Connor Groce. We sit down with franchise owners and operators across industries to get unfiltered, boots on the ground perspective as to what's working, what's hard, and what nobody tells you.
Whether you're exploring your first franchise or you're a multi-unit operator looking for new ideas,
Franchise Firsthand gives you the playbook one story at a time. Welcome to Franchise Firsthand.
Welcome back to another episode of Franchising Firsthand, where Connor puts me in the hot seat to learn all about how Rainmaker is supporting franchise sales and marketing. He's going to ask questions about what are some of the trends that we're seeing, what are some of the big things to keep an eye out for when you're looking at due diligencing one of these companies. So stay tuned for the end. You're not going to want to miss it.
Welcome back to the Franchise Firsthand podcast. Connor Groce here, and today Garth is on the hot seat, getting interviewed about a little bit of his story and how he's found his way through the corporate world, the ETA world, into now helping people create value through franchising. So, Garth, let's do it.
Yeah, well, fun to be in the hot seat. We'll see how this goes. I feel like a little bit of an imposter as I am not a franchise owner or operator, but after a career in consulting at Deloitte and BCG, as well as in the customer support space, I got involved in entrepreneurship through acquisition and acquired a company about 3 years ago that was fully supporting franchises and helping them do their sales and marketing. And I've sort of been sucked into the vortex of franchising ever since, and now get to see a lot of different operators, a lot of different brands, and what's working and what's not working. And it's just been fun to learn so much about this space.
So one of the reasons I'm really excited to co-host this podcast with you is that I get to see a lot of the front end of people getting into franchising, and sometimes don't get to see as much of the back end as I would like. Because, once they do, that's kind of what I help people do, is to do the deal. And then once they do that, I don't have as much visibility. You get the visibility into the back end because you spend, like your business spends all day working with franchisees. So I'm just really excited to explore this, kind of the duality in the perspective that we live in that completes the picture of what franchising looks like. So on that note, can you just tell us a little bit about the business that you acquired? Just tell us a little bit more about what it did and also like the franchisees that they worked with initially, and then we'll walk that through how that's evolved and, to present day.
Absolutely. So business that I acquired was perfectly aligned with my background. I'd been doing call center sales and service for basically 20 years of my career. Worked in Fortune 10 companies, Fortune 100 companies, doing massive transformation projects around this, and had always been looking for the opportunity to get involved with more local businesses in my community, and found a Colorado-based sales solution for franchisees. I really didn't know much about franchising at the time. And we worked with had about 90% penetration in one franchise brand with franchisees across the United States and Canada. And that business has continued to evolve. There's been a lot of changes in this space in just the 2.5 years. With the introduction of AI, we still have a lot of people supporting our clients, but more and more technology is getting brought into this. What was incredibly unique about the business that I bought, and what was so different than a lot of the other sort of what we called outsourced solutions, business process outsourcers, it's a huge industry. And what typically happens when a business outsources a process like customer service or sales is they are really just outsourcing the people. They're taking what would be internal resources, leveraging the business process outsourcers resources, helping getting them trained on those tasks, and having them executed in their systems. What was different about Rainmaker is that we actually own and operate all the technology that enables this customer engagement. So we have our own CRM system. We have our own telephony solution. We have our own text messaging solution. We have our own omni-channel solution. So that enables us to continue to make improvements to the process on behalf of our customers. And so I think why this is really valuable for the small and medium business segment, and especially franchisees, is that, on your podcast, you mentioned how, you had multiple people quit all at once and sort of you were in the fire. When you're in those types of moments, the last thing you can deal with is sort of, how do I update my technology systems? How do I improve this process? And you're sort of at decision fatigue because you're sort of in what I would call the knife fight, or maybe the fetal position moments. And so we take a lot of that, burden off of our clients and help optimize for it. We also have the data to help them optimize. We are seeing customer interactions at scale across generally an entire network within a brand. And so when we see something working in one market, we can bring it into another, test, help them learn and make improvements there. But to sort of really get down to the brass tacks to what this business is doing is it's managing the lead flow for small businesses. So a lead comes in, maybe via a phone call, maybe via a thumbtack, maybe via a web lead. And then we have the sales process and methodology that works that lead, communicates with that prospect, educates them about the service, and ultimately books them and takes payment and puts it on a calendar for that franchisee. So basically everything's signed, sealed, delivered from getting the lead to getting a customer.
Love it. And so part of what's cool about your business is that when you started, it was it was basically 100% industry concentrated, right? And then as you've matured, you've now diversified across industries. Can you talk to us a little bit about, first of all, the pet industry? What was it like to start in the pet industry? What did you learn about the pet industry that maybe somebody considering the pet industry should be aware of, the pain points, high points, et cetera?
Yeah. So we were very concentrated in the pet industry when I acquired the business, and sort of one of the goals was, how do we diversify outside of this to build a better portfolio for the company, but learned a ton about the pet industry. I think, and where do I even start? I think I went to all of the pet industry conferences last year, and our team went, and it was very, so many good learnings, but it's a very fragmented industry. There are a couple big franchises in this space. And I think there are a lot of very different approaches to how these franchises are setting up their franchisees' business models. And they are very different. And so I would really, since this is about franchising, if you're thinking about getting into these, really think through the business model and the different types, because there's home-based, where there's really no physical locations, lower overhead, sometimes owner operator, sometimes with employees. And then there's more in facility. And this is where you are maybe doing boarding, you're doing training there. And that is a very different business model. And you can see that come through in the P&Ls on these businesses. So I think that's one really big differentiator in this industry. There are also a bunch of different styles and approaches to training, belief systems in how pets are handled. And so I think that you also need to make sure you're thinking about something that aligns with your personality and your personal goals and objectives too.
Yeah. I think we've talked about this before, but I don't believe in following your passion in business ownership. But pets, youth enrichment, and home care are three industries where I'm if you don't like animals, don't touch that business. You do need to, you not even a passion, but you do need to like animals if you're going to get into the pet business.
Yeah. And luckily, we have a dog, and he is a very integral member of our family. He comes with us everywhere. He's on the cover of our newborn's photo album with our newborn. So definitely a family member. And so I think you're right. There's a couple of these where you do really have to love the space. And fortunately, it was a good fit. And a lot of that culture has stayed through in our team, even though now we work in a variety of different industries. Our teammates and, there are still very emotional and strong feelings about dogs and pets at our company.
Absolutely. And so with that initial tranche of customers that you guys had, that you inherited through the acquisition, that was all in the pet industry, all within the one franchise system, can you walk us through kind of the heuristic of the franchisees that in a franchise like that were successful? Was this predominantly owner operators where people are tactically doing the dog training? Were there a lot of franchisees that had scaled to multi-location? Just give us the landscape of what that franchise system looked like.
Yeah, that's a great question. It is predominantly owner operated, but there were also, I would say, a subset of franchisees that had scaled into multiple locations and had a little bit more of what you would describe as your executive ownership. And so probably about 15 of the, let's say 15% of the system units were sort of more in those sort of like territory roll-ups, geographic expansion. And that's probably a little bit of an understatement. It was probably 15 to 30%. I'm not privy to exactly all of the ownership structures of those. And so I think that I learned that was a pretty good process, and I could see what these folks were doing. I think so many of them also loved it, though, that they would continue to operate in their market, but help expand into others as well.
Got it. That's really cool. And really where I think you guys' service hits home is in two kinds of main situations. And in my head, you tell me if you agree with this, but it's first of all, in a system like that might be dog training. This may be somebody that loves dogs, right? They love to train dogs and they want to be training dogs. What they don't want to be doing is selling.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just not what they enjoy doing. Maybe they're not good at it, et cetera. But what your service fills that void is that they're able to dedicate more of their involvement towards doing the thing that the business does and being really good at it. And then the other lane where I see it is where you have groups that do want to scale and they need to bring in third-party reinforcements to, pad their existing team in place. I guess, do you agree with like those two lanes? And I guess which lane do you feel like is more or less, if either, of what you guys are trying to do?
I think it's really maybe simplifying it a little. Those lanes are true, but to simplify it, it's to folks who want to grow or want to save themselves time. And so an owner operator model, which actually give a couple of comments on that. It's a very clear fit. If you're an owner operator, you don't have the time to be working your pipeline. And then if any time your business gets busy in terms of the operations, then your sales suffer. And so then your next month is slow. So you get sort of these peaks and valleys in your revenue, which is particularly painful if you're an owner operator. So this is a great solution for something like that. For our clients that own multiple locations, they really want to be focused on growth. They don't want to be focused on sort of this nitty-gritty business operation that can be, very time consuming. And so they leverage our service so that they can focus on the operations, like you said. But I think what I've learned is that we also have a bunch of clients that, even though they have someone who works a front desk and sits there and it's not an owner operator model, they are sick of the pressure of seeing a lead, knowing how much they paid for it, and then feeling that pressure on a Saturday morning to be, doing the outreach, starting that process, giving them a phone call, sending a text message, following up with an email, and then setting a reminder for themselves to do it the next day or on Monday when they're in the office. And then having some other fire come up in the office, and that's slipping to Monday afternoon, now Tuesday afternoon, now Wednesday, and they know that lead slipped by. So I think that this is something that's incredibly valuable for a lot of different types of franchisees, but really where it sort of fits in perfectly is if you have a growth objective. If you're trying to grow your business, this is a great solution to help make sure every lead is getting worked as the best way possible. And then the other is if you're really trying to focus your time in other places, this is an awesome opportunity to take that off your plate and put it into the hands of professionals.
Yeah, that's awesome. And one thing that I think that sometimes people miss when they're getting into business in general, but particularly in franchising, is that it can be challenging to staff managers and admin when you're subscale. Like that's just, it's a challenging thing whenever you're under, call it 2 million in revenue. It can be very challenging because you a lot of times you hit this inflection point where it's like, I can't quite afford, or it doesn't quite make sense to hire this additional person, but my existing person is getting spread thin and they, it's detracting from their other responsibilities. And so that's where, a situation like Rainmaker or other creative solutions can make sense, where you really need to get creative and augment an existing role more than you need to hire another one.
Yeah, this is, one of the biggest advantages of leveraging another team that specializes in this to help you with processes. And I was talking to an entrepreneur just yesterday over a cup of coffee, and her business is over $1 million in revenue. She has built it from the ground up, 0 to 1 entrepreneur. And she was discussing another hire with me. And it is this like scary moment where that additional hire is like such the perfect fit. She's in a very unique market. This is a one of a kind hire in the world. And she needs to get this person. But to do that, it's going to make her business unprofitable for a period of time until she gets a couple more clients. But like that person has the ability to, really help them scale the business. And it's a scary choice. Growth is this stepwise function when you are subscale that is very intimidating and very scary until probably that $2, $3, $5 million mark. And you're going to continue having these inflection points. And so leveraging another team to do these tasks, we're often able to do it at a significantly lower cost than what it would take to hire a person to do that. The other thing is that technology is going to completely change so much that we do. I think a lot of franchisees don't have perfect visibility into their lifetime value, customer acquisition costs, what marketing campaigns are working, what are not. And so, technology is going to bring a massive transformation to this. Like when we get leads from franchises, we can score them. We put them through our AI algorithm and I can score them and basically into high, medium, lows, not rocket science, but lows have a 3% chance of converting. Highs have a 20% chance of converting. And people are still spending money on lows and they don't know what campaigns are driving those lower quality leads. And, starting to enable our franchisees with data like this is going to help them make much better decisions to improve their CAC to LTV ratios, ultimately helping them scale their business too. And that's not the kind of thing you're going to get if you hire another person.
Yeah. And we talk a lot in franchising about the network that you get as part of a franchise system, from the perspective of the owner, which is very true. I think that what people don't talk a lot about is the network advantages that come with your team. Because my general manager with Smash, he talks with other general managers in Smash and they compare notes. And a lot of times he ends up resolving issues by collaborating with others before it even makes its way to me. And the same thing, we have offshore admins that have a Slack channel with like a bunch of other offshore admins in Smash My Trash. And so I guess, do you see the same dynamic in Rainmaker where as a result of being able to aggregate all of this data and all of these best practices, because you have multiple clients running the same business under the same brand name, just how it catalyzes your path to proficiency?
Absolutely. For some franchises, we handle their new franchisee onboarding. We walk them through what are the standard processes that they should be using because we're booking customers for them. So we help them get set up. We help them with their initial pricing. So we can streamline a lot of those processes. And then when something isn't going right, we often see it first. Again, just yesterday, I called a handful of customers and said, "Hey, your lead volume is down this month. We got about 5 days left in the month. Your lead volume is trending 25% down. Hey, what's going on? Let's look into this." And so our data is actually able to help them understand what's going on, triage, and take proactive measures before, they have a bad month. So, and then, you can also take learnings from across the network. Hey, some people had this same issue. They did this worked, and we can help relay that across. Now, there are a lot of great franchises we work with. Internal consultants that a lot of franchise organizations have that help share these best practices. I think we're also in a pretty unique position because we have such strong data on what's going on, and we're seeing sort of that sales, marketing, offer, pricing, packaging motion thousands of times, often more than the franchisor or the consultants internally. So we're able to help share those learnings really quickly.
I love it. So you started out in dog training exclusively. I know that since then the business has grown into home services and some other things. So can you just talk us through how the scope of franchisees that you work with has expanded? And then I'm also interested to dive into the differences between selling dog training versus selling some of these other services and how much of that is the same versus how much of it has to be tailored to the individual franchise system.
So the company has continued to have a focus on home services. So the dog training franchise is home service based. And so we're continuing to work in home cleaning, pest control. We have now fitness, and we have some education clients. And, we're being very careful about where we expand to make sure that we're still able to provide a great product. But one of the really unique things, and I think what surprises a lot of people, is that the sales motions are very similar. The words are different. The way you describe things are different. But these small business sales, the same things hold true across every franchise we've worked with. You got to have a local look and feel. You got to make it easy for customers. You got to have simple pricing and packaging. And the conversations in sales flow are very consistent. You ask questions, be curious, really fundamentally be human, try to really fundamentally understand what's going on. Why is this person reaching out for help? And give them very educational discussion on what the service is, why it's a good fit, what the options are. It's a very consultative and educational sale to make people feel comfortable. And so that holds true in dog training, that holds true in home cleaning, that holds true in pest control. People have a lot of questions about, who's coming to my home, what are they doing? What does the process look like? Is this right for me? Is this a good fit for my pets? Across all of these brands, pets are a very common question. And so I think what surprises people is it's actually very consistent.
Yeah. So you mentioned kind of the local look and feel. And I'm curious about that because that's something that sometimes people question about franchises. Is this more appealing to my local community having a national brand name versus if I was to set up Garth's dog training or something like that and be, truly customer facing as a locally owned and operated business? So I guess, first of all, what are your thoughts on that? And then second of all, how do you maintain some kind of a local look and feel when you by definition are not local, So when people's taking the call that doesn't live there, how do you reconcile that?
Yeah. So there's two questions there. Like, is it local when it's a national brand? And I think the answer is yes. I think from analyzing our call data, customers love knowing that it's not just a one-off, not just an independent, that there is a, larger support behind them, that is, helping them with the right products, helping with the right processes so that they know it's very professional and completely vetted. So I think that is very comforting to purchasers in the home services space. The local look and feel is something we work really hard at. And most people that communicate with us don't know that we are not in that local market. And so a couple of ways that we do this are we use local phone numbers for every business. We're texting on those local phone numbers. And I think one thing that's really unique is you can actually call us back on that same text message number. We never send that message that I think is sort of the worst customer experience ever. Like, hey, did you know this? Do not reply here or something like that. Like, we don't respond to this, absolutely not. We respond to every single one of those. And if you call that number back, we answer, and there's no sort of crazy IVR system. Press 1 for this, wait on hold. It rings directly to our team. So I think that's pretty unique. Now, you also mentioned if our teammates aren't local, how do they present locally? They know the markets that they're working in pretty well. And, I know one of the brands, the weather is incredibly important and comes up a lot. And so every morning they're posting the local weather. So they can actually talk about the local weather. I've had a teammate who was selling a service that was out of a retail location. And the customer was asking hey, I'm going to get there early. Where do I park? Is there a gym nearby? I want to go do that. And at your fingertips, you have the power of Google, so you can answer these kinds of questions. And so it's not hard to present a perfect local look and feel. Now, we're not going to lie to a customer. If they ever asked us, we would be honest about what's going on. But it's very easy to, present in a way where that question never comes up.
Yeah, I used Ruby in my first year in my home service franchise, and they at one point picked up the phone. I'm in Raleigh, and they picked up in the phone and pronounced it Rayleigh. I was like, that's kind of a dead giveaway. We got to pronounce the name right, and I feel like Raleigh's a pretty well-known city, so let's get that one right. But anyway, so you got to avoid the blunders like that. But I agree. Once people want good service, and they're not gonna push back too hard. Either way. So I feel like I know some things that we may not want to talk about, but I'll let you what you care to divulge on. But tell me what is exciting coming down the pipeline for Rainmaker, and what are you working on now that you want people to know about at this time?
Yeah. So I think the thing that is transforming the opportunity in this space is technology. And so we just raised a $5 million seed round, which is a pretty large round and a little bit unique for a post-revenue company that has gone through an ETA process. But what it's really going to let us do is bring in more technology to improve the service, help drive sales outcomes for home service franchises, and really provide it at a cost that's going to become a no-brainer. We've seen what AI models can now deliver, and it's truly impressive and amazing. And I think what is really exciting for small business operators is imagine that, you're going to have your best sales rep working every single lead perfectly and instantly. You're also going to have full visibility and data that really reveals insights and what you can do differently and better in your business. And now it's all going to be available at a very comfortable and simple price point rather than something that feels like some massive enterprise deal. And so I think that that's really exciting for the home services space and for those operators that are looking to save themselves time, looking to grow. And, once this price point comes down, it's going to be sort of a no-brainer for just about anyone.
Awesome. And then just one last question for you, just thinking about the franchise landscape more broadly. I know, a lot of people are listening to this. If they're not already in franchising, might be considering getting into franchising. You're very immersed in just the sales and marketing landscape of franchisees. And so for somebody that's just wanting to conduct diligence on a franchise opportunity, mainly on the sales and marketing side of things, what are some things that you would just advise them to pay special attention to?
Oh, I think that's perfect. I think any franchise due diligence needs to start with the FDD. You're going to see the things that you can and cannot do in there. That's really important. But beyond that, go test it out, make some calls, explore their website, call their competitors, be a lead, go through the process. I think a lot of folks in the ETA space think, I can buy one of these businesses that hasn't been, focused on that much. I can do some sales and marketing and really make it pop. Well, go through that process and learn what they're really doing. I think that, once you get into it, a lot of operators do find that it's a little bit more than spending a bit more on Google. I think that now there's a lot more value on getting out in your market, getting more organic leads, having people know about you, and just spending a little bit more money with Google ads does not get you the right kind of quality leads to grow the business. So go through that process, learn what they're doing, because there are probably ways that you can improve it. But I think it does take a little bit more involvement and elbow grease than what a lot of people think. And so I think get out there, experience it, and see what's working.
You're referencing a specific archetype of franchisor that I always say has a great history and should run for, or a great future in a congressional campaign and should run for Congress when their only solution is just spend more money on everything. Just go throw more money at Google. If you're some of them should stop running franchises and start running for Congress because it would be a good fit. Because yes, you're right. That is not the solution for everything. And on that note, last question for you: in a home service business, and I know this is going to vary, but what do you think is a rough LTV to CAC ratio that makes sense?
Well, I think 3-to-1 is a spot where you should keep spending money. Now, I think that the one differentiator when you have a smaller owner operated 3-to-1, they might start trying to think of what is the trade-offs for their time and their operational cost. But when it's employee driven, 3-to-1 is something that makes a lot of sense. 5-to-1 is something that SaaS companies are throwing money at all day long. I think 3-to-1 is pretty good. It also depends on the nature of the business. If it's one time or if it's a repeat long-term multi-year customer. I think what's interesting is that in home services, a lot of people have really gravitated towards franchises that are not project-based. But I also think what a lot of franchisees have experienced in those types of businesses is that the retention of those clients has started to shrink. And so it's putting more pressure on
confirm.
You can confirm. Okay. Yeah. So, and this is probably something, again, worth doing a whole nother episode on, but what are some of these big shifts that are happening and what's challenging some of those models? And I'm seeing franchisors react to this in different ways. And some of those are working well. Some of those are not working as well. And we have pretty good visibility into that data.
Awesome. Well, anything else you care to share just about you or about Rainmaker in general?
Oh, this is perfect. This is a ton of fun. I feel like a little bit of an imposter in the franchising space, but I love the way that you describe this, Connor, is like you get to see a lot of this action on the front end and we're in the operations. We think sales and marketing is such an important part of the business. And I talked to a longtime franchisee in a 40-year-old brand. He's been an owner for 39 years. And he described that when he got into it, the founders of that franchise told him that he was buying a company that was a sales and marketing company that happened to specialize in their home service, function. And so I think that that's something that a lot of people need to think about when they're making these decisions. It's a sales and marketing company that has a specialty and an operational capability.
Awesome. Well, thanks for your time in the hot seat, and hopefully for everybody, when you join us next time, you'll have somebody more interesting than Garth and I to talk to. But we're excited to have really good and fruitful conversations about everything happening in the world of franchising, and we will see you soon.
Thanks, Connor.